What's going on, Babylonians? It's me, Songs of Rage, and I'm back with some more Dead Island 2 footage to be able to bring to you. Now, today we're going to be discussing how to build into heavy attacks, because there are a number of actual builds that you can use in Dead Island 2. Some of them are very useful, some of them have high mobility, but this one packs the punch. This one is basically the major DPS when it comes to the amount of high risk, high reward that you're going to be able to put into this game, and it does kind of revolve a little bit around certain legendary weapons, but you can make it work with other ones, so don't feel like that has to be that's the be all and end all. You definitely can use this with other kind of like your purple rarity weapons when it comes to this, but my build is purely going to showcase how to be able to get the most out of the Krakatoa and the Emma's Wrath, and I'm going to show you my perk deck when it comes to it to be able to get that most out of it when it comes to DPS. Now, before we go any further, make sure that you have dropped a like and subscribe if you did enjoy this kind of content. If you do, then I'll actually look into be able to making a few more to be able to show my favourite one, which is going to be the maiming kind of subclass, and to be able to show how you to be able to get a massive amount of damage, to be able to slice through everything and anything that gets in your way. But anyways, that's for another video. We're going to have a look into the heavy hitting ones, and let's get right into the video. Now, first and foremost, it's probably best that we actually have a quick look into the weapons that we are planning to use to be able to showcase why they are so good and why they're so effective when it comes to being able to make this build work. Now, obviously, the perk deck in of itself is a great way to be able to synergize with this, but we're going to have a look into the weapons themselves to be able to explain what makes this so good, what kind of works, and how we're able to kind of put that into a certain playstyle. Now, my first and foremost choice when it comes to this is going to be the Krakatoa. This is my favorite legendary that's pretty much in the game, and even though it is purely a fire rarity, which means that it does mean that we're going to struggle against a couple of enemies that we will be coming up against. The rest of it just has it in spades. If it synergizes perfectly with this build, it's got a great damage, it's got a great able to do maiming, so it means we're able to effectively aim for critical hits. Overall, it's just stunning, so that's what we want to be able to go for. So let's have a look into the details of this weapon to be able to see what makes it so good. So as mentioned, this is sharp is maiming. Maiming regains our stamina, which is a great way because we are going into heavy attacks, which all of those are going to start consuming our stamina, so we have an effective way to be able to use this weapon outside of that to be able to regain some of that back. On top of that, we target our limbs for critical hits, nice and easy. It does come with a superior melee chromator mod, means our weapon is purely going to be fire damage, and this gives us successive hits to zombie, allows us to be able to apply the ignited effect, allowing us to be able to do a damage over time. On top of the perks though, we have Reaper, where hitting an ignited zombie primes the weapon, and when primed, heavy attacks inflict additional fire and limb damage, and this effect can stack multiple times. It's very effective because we are looking to be able to, the only way we'll be able to effectively leave ignited on an enemy is if we have one of our curveballs to be able to apply that straight away, but any kind of like lesser zombies will not get ignited primarily from using this weapon. It is going to be some of the higher rarity or the apex variants when it comes to it that we're able to reliably put that damage over time for us to then continually hit afterwards. On top of that, we have Tear and Sear, where we have maiming a zombie creates a pool of burning fuel beneath its feet. This is pretty much what's going to be killing off the rest of the zombies. Like, if we are able to chop off like one leg swing with just one swing of this axe, we'll primarily just leave them to be able to die in the damage over time kind of pool of fire that we will be leaving behind. But this also serves a second purpose, which we'll cover when we get to the perk deck. In terms of the two mods that we are able to change over though, I have put Skilled, where killing a zombie gives us a moderate damage boost to our heavy attacks, and they also charge up faster, because once again, we are going into our heavy attacks, and that's definitely a useful thing to be able to have. And then Bloodthirsty, where killing a zombie gives us a moderate damage boost, and generates additional fury. Now you can have the one where I think it's called Violent, where it just purely gives you, where killing a zombie gives you a moderate damage boost, but Bloodthirsty gives us a little bit of extra on top of that, because it gives us some utility towards our fury, but feel free, if you don't have this one, feel free to be able to go for Violence instead to be able to get that damage boost. Both of these are very useful when it comes to this slot, so feel free to be able to mix and match whichever ones you have available. Now, while Krakatoa will be our main weapon when it comes to this, we will definitely be talking about Emma's Wrath in this as well, because while Krakatoa is great against pretty much all enemies that we will be coming up against, there will be times where we come up against Inferno type enemies, and that means that we will then suffer because we can't do any damage. Well, we can with using a certain runner's ability and all that kind of thing, but primarily you can't, and therefore that's where Emma's Wrath kind of comes in as an alternative for us to be able to swap over to. So Emma's Wrath comes with the Blunt and Bulldozer abilities, meaning that we drain our stability, well, drain enemy stability, and heavy attacks are always critical hits, great, and throwing weapons will cause forceful explosions. We're pretty much never going to be throwing this weapon, we will be using this as a way to be able to start bludgeoning our enemies to death. On top of that, it comes with the superior melee impactor mod, meaning that we get a massive physical damage and force boost, where successful hits supply the traumatized, and also on top of that, vulnerable regular zombies will go flying if they get hit enough with the traumatized, damaging anything that hits them when they go flying. So, you know, we have because of the melee impactor mod, we're always able to apply this, and we're always going to be able to do damage regardless of what zombie is going to be in front of us, meaning that there is literally no weaknesses or downsides to when using this. In terms of the perks though, we have Overkill, where Skull Stomp will counter an enemy to be able to prime this weapon, and when primed, hitting a zombie will trigger a shotgun blast to be able to give us some more DPS. And then we also have Shockwave, where knocking down a zombie triggers a forceful explosion on impact. Quite nice there as well. And this is where we just go into the exact same kind of like perks that we did have over on the Krakatoa. So this time I haven't swapped over Violent just yet, so therefore we've got Skilled to be able to do a moderate damage boost on our heavy attacks and charge faster, and then Violent to be able to give us a moderate damage boost on top of that. Okay, so we've had a quick look in terms of the weapon, so let's have a look into the perk deck to be able to show how this is all going to synergize together. And it's not going to be every single one of these cards. There's definitely ones that you can feel free to slot in. If you know, you want to be able to put your own customized spin on it, if you don't like a couple of the things that I'm using. So primarily I'm using dodge, but basically we'll never really kind of use our dodge ability. We are going to be sort of literally tanking all the hits, and there won't be that many in of itself. We have our drop kick to be able to just a standard. I just feel like the forceful drop kick is better than the other one. Dash strike is the main one that I will primarily go for. Now you definitely can swap this in for ground pound to be able to do more force and to be able to drain stability of nearby enemies. You definitely can get away with that, but the reason why I go for dash strike is we've got a way to be able to replenish our health through the things of vivisection. So our dash strike allows us to be able to gain a little bit of health. Now it's not going to be a massive amount of health, so you definitely can swap this out. The reason why it's not going to be a massive amount of health is because we have fully maxed out our autophage skills, but you know, it's still something. It's also a nice bit of mobility to be able to help us go like forward towards enemies. It's great for stunning butchers. It's overall it's a great skill, and that's just primarily the reason why I've gone for that one. In terms of Blood Rush, in terms of how we gain our fury, just slaying zombies I just think is the best one, rather than having a way to be able for us to be able to lose it. We do have our Overhead Smash, and that's when we use our fury mode, but that's if we ever get into a bit of a pickle or anything like that. So let's have a look into the proper perks, the ones that really kind of like work well and really synergize with this build. Now the main foremost is going to be our Slayer card, which is going to be our Heavy Hitter, which is an autophage skill which packs a punch, and our heavy attacks gain a major boost to damage, but they also start draining our health. This means that we will start making our way through all of our health, and the reason why we've also gone into autophage as much as possible is because when we slay zombies we gain a boost to our health and our damage, which means our damage is going to help us to be able to slay the rest of the zombies. On top of that, we've got a boost to our health to be able to regain all of that back, allowing us to be able to stay in the fight and actually use that quite effectively. Now this card is the first and foremost is going to be the main thing to be able to help you out with any kind of heavy attack build, and the reason why is because it just gives you such a massive increase to the amount of damage that you're able to put out, effectively putting you over into that 5-digit numbers as long as you're able to stack the rest of the stuff with the rest of the build. Now just do keep in mind that if you don't go into full autophage with this, you will start draining your health faster than you possibly can refill it, so you may want to be able to rejig some of the cards that are going to be in this to be able to help get you around, or maybe change some of the weapon mods to be able to have a chance to be able to give you some of that health back, because otherwise you will be starting to like draw yourself really kind of like low down in terms of that health pool, and it's probably not the most effective way to be able to build this. Now in terms of other cards though, the ones that really give us some really nice damage boosts on top of that, we do have Pay It Forward. Now I wasn't too sure about being able to use this one, but that yellow text where it says major boost of damage has really sold me, and it's actually a really good way to be able to help you out in this. So you kind of need to build the rest of this around this card as well, because you need to find a way to be able to put a harmful status effect, but just know that if you do have a harmful status effect, you're starting to lose that health, and that paired with Heavy Hitter is going to be an absolute death sentence to yourself if you're not careful. Now there are ways around it. Like I said, you do have your autophage skills, so because you will be reliably killing enemies, you will actually start like putting yourself back up, but you definitely just want to be able to apply the status effect and then get out of the pool of fire. The most efficient way to be able to get this going is actually using your Krakatoa, because if you do maim a certain zombie or anything like that and they fall on the floor and this pool starts going, you can then get yourself inside of that, start working your way all the way up to ignited, and once you are ignited your damage just skyrockets. This thing is absolutely insane. It's genuinely just crazy as to how much you can actually put out, but just know that you will be putting yourself on a timer if you're not killing enemies, so you just need to be kind of mindful to be able to know when you're going to have to use a med kit or something like that to be able to take away that debuff on yourself. Now fortunately, because the Krakatoa is a maiming weapon, there are actually a couple of things that will be able to help us out in this regard. So we do have things like Hack and Dash, where because this is a Danny exclusive, maiming a zombie for a boost to your attack speed. It's overall quite nice because it is a two-handed weapon, so therefore it swings quite slowly. And on top of that, we also have Surgeon, where maiming a zombie gives us a moderate boost to our damage. So these two, like just in combination, gives us a nice DPS increase. On top of everything else, just really kind of like playing into it. Now, in terms of like survivability, there is an absolutely amazing one which is going to be in the Newman category, and this is going to be Born Survivor. And what this means is what you're about to die, a forceful explosion will trigger instead and drain your fury. Attack zombies to be able to regain your health. If you ever get yourself into a bit of a pickle, this card is an absolute lifesaver and is a great way to be able to keep yourself alive, rather than seeing that game over death screen as well. I think this is pretty much necessary for the build, considering how many ways we've got to be able to start draining our health. When we start looking into, obviously, heavy hits or heavy attacks are going to start draining us, we kind of need to stand inside a status effect to be able to get that massive boost in damage. We're already killing ourselves, and that's not even taking into consideration the amount of hits that we're going to be taking from being within that kind of horde or being around certain types of zombies. So we've talked about the ways to be able to increase our damage. Well, what if I told you there was a way to increase it even further that actually synergizes with everything that we've already discussed if we take away Born Survivor? And that is going to be the other Newman thing, which is Glass Cannon, where you gain a moderate boost to our critical damage, but you get an even bigger boost on top of that when our health is low. But just keep in mind that our overall toughness is going to be reduced, meaning that we're going to be taking even more damage. So we just need to factor that in when we are starting to go up close and personal with some things. Either way, all of these cards paired together mean that we're going to have a massive damage output with every single swing that we're going to be doing, as long as we are landing critical hits. But it is relatively easy to with a maiming weapon to be able to do that, and it's even easier when we start factoring in our heavy hits, because they most of the time, more often than not, are going to be critical hits, meaning that we're going to always retain that DPS increase. Whichever way you look at it, we do have our get out of jail free card with our Born Survivor, so just in case you do get down to that 0 threshold, we do have a way to be able to stay a little bit alive and to be able to stay in that fight longer than we thought. But we haven't touched upon our Survivor skill tree just yet, so there's only going to be 3 that are going to help out, with Ravenous being the one that's not going to do too much, because that's only when we're in Fury mode. So if we were to have a look at the other 3, we do have Serial Killer, which is a Danny exclusive, to be able to indulge in a vicious cycle of death, slay a zombie for a minor boost of damage, so the more we start going through the rest of the horde, the more damage we'll be putting out, once again filtering back into everything that we've already talked about. We do have our Thick Skinned, which is a great autophage skill, which toughens up with a moderate boost to toughness against physical attacks, allowing us to be able to actually stay in the horde, and the only thing we then have to worry about is ourselves killing us. But we do have a minor reduced resilience against fire shock and caustic damage, which means we will be taking a little bit more damage when we do stand inside that fire pool that we will be creating. And on top of that, we do have Vivisection, which is when we combine that with our Dash Strike to be able to regain some health. And so just using it as a mobility skill, but also a way to be able to keep us alive, is a great thing to be able to use, and I personally would recommend Dash Strike to be able to use in this build. Now, the last 2 things for us to be able to talk about in terms of synergizing the rest of the build are actually going to be through our curveballs, because we do have access to a couple of things that will really help us out. Now, I really enjoy the Shuriken, but the Shuriken's not going to help us out when it comes to this build, because what we want to be able to do is apply status effects, so the most important thing that we can actually throw out is going to be the Molotov cocktail. The reason why this is so good is not only does it ignite enemies, it also leaves behind a pool of fire for you to stand in to be able to get that status effect going. So if you are looking for a little bit of help to be able to increase the amount of DPS that you can put out, feel free to use the Molotov cocktail. Now, if you do, like I said already before, if you do worry about those status effects, you can always use a medkit to be able to get rid of any kind of harmful status that is applied to yourself. And on top of that, you can feel free to use something like the Chem Bomb to be able to put yourself out. It's definitely something that you can be able to throw around or anything, but just keep in mind that if you do use the Chem Bomb to be able to apply Soggy, it's then going to be really hard to be able to ignite the rest of the enemies, so that's something that you probably should factor in. Now, technically, you could get away with anything as long as it leaves behind a pool of damage over time, so something like the Caustic X Bomb would probably help you out as well to be able to inflict melting, and then as soon as you've got that applied, once again, you have that damage over time ready to be able to go. Other things that probably won't work, though, and because they're in terms of like self-damage or anything like that, Nail Bombs probably won't work because you can't apply damage to yourself with any kind of explosions like that. Flashbangs also don't work, so you definitely can't apply that. So you just need to factor in, when it comes to curveballs, what leaves a damaging pool over time, and then you know that that's something that you can use. Overall, this build is a lot of fun, and once again, it does put out a lot of damage, and it allows you to be able to tackle any kind of threat that comes your way. I mean, Butchers can be taken out in 2 swings. Any normal zombies can be taken out with one single maim to their legs, including shamblers as well. Those are really, really simple to be able to get going. You can just take out anything right in front of you, and that is literally as simple as it gets. Hopefully we'll get some of the harder zombies in here. There we go. But yeah, it's just crazy as to the amount of damage that you can put out with this. I mean, the Voltic Screamer just got taken down with one single hit when it comes to this build, so that should really tell you as to how good this actually is. Overall, when it comes to this build, I would highly recommend being able to give this a go. Heavy attacks in this game are very underrated in terms of the amount of damage they can do, because they are considered a bit slow, but when you use weapons like the Krakatoa, or when you use things like Emma's Wrath, or maybe even the One, definitely some weapons are really good in this, and I definitely would recommend trying to find some of these legendary weapons to try this out. But anyway, that brings us to the end of the video. A massive thank you to the Babylonian family, massive thank you to yourselves for making it all the way to the end. I hope you've enjoyed. If you did, let me know in the comment section down below. Are you going to be interested to be able to try this build out, and just to be able to wreak havoc in front of everything that comes your way? There will be plenty more builds coming to the channel for Dead Island 2, so make sure to keep your eyes peeled out for those, and to subscribe to be able to find your way back to the channel. But with all that said and done, that just leaves me to say, keep yourself safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on our next video.